more than just steel and gears. It pulls you in and doesn't let go.
Okay. Hello. Welcome to very special Carousel podcast episode with Zach Cohen. What's up, Zach?
Isaac, how are you?
So Zach is a writer and branding guy, and he has just published a fantastic article on the Carousel, actually, about Sam Hyde and Nick Fuentes and how they are sort of the last of America First. And it got a lot of buzz. A lot of people were commenting, so we wanted to do an episode on it. So why don't you tell us the thesis of this article and why you, as a Jew overlord running the world, would ever agree with these people who are undermining our hegemony over global affairs?
Yeah, I'm definitely a race trader now, apparently, which is good. I've always wanted to be that. I think, thanks for having me, Isaac. Great to be here. And thanks for hosting the piece on the Carousel. It's been a really great reception. I urge people to go take a quick look at the piece.
We need 10 more likes.
It's not too long.
10 more likes to get to 100. So everybody go like the piece. Go like it.
Like it, sub it, stack it, renote it, whatever. I think my own personal journey with guys like Hyde and Fuentes goes back a couple of years. I was aware of Sam Hyde and aware of Nick going back to 2016 and the sort of first America First MAGA thing, but I didn't really focus on them. I didn't have a good entry point. And I think a couple of years ago, as I started to spend more time on what I was being told was the fringe, guys like Pete Quinones and Thomas and some of these other gents, like names like Nick Fuentes and Sam Hyde kept popping up as these enfant terrible of like right-wing, far right, stuff. And obviously they're very different. Sam's a comic and a, DIY kind of video maker, cartoonist. He was one of the first victims of cancel culture. Whereas Nick, is much younger and comes from the kind of straight political streaming world. And, I think ultimately I've just been on a truth-seeking journey that you get to like the final boss. And the final boss is, who are you absolutely not allowed to like or listen to? And so Nick Fuentes and Sam Hyde were kind of, for me, those final bosses of like, oh yeah, it's okay if you listen to Orrin McIntyre or Tucker. Whereas 5 years ago, that was verboten. Now Tucker's mainstream, Candace is kind of mainstream. Where else do you go? And obviously I don't have to agree with everything. In fact, I prefer not to, but I did want to see for myself something that I think is a thing we miss a lot of. We take other people's words for things. The social engineering and framing of other people, voices and ideas is very powerful. And ultimately it's like, you know what? I'm in my 40s. I can decide for myself who's an anti-Semite, what nationalism is, what I should be scared of or not afraid of. And that was what really took me into their world. And as a media guy and critic and branding guy, like I look at things critically. I look at aesthetics, style, and substance. And particularly what I started to see out of those two was not only on a substance part, but on the style quotient, really starting to ring some bells for me as in these guys are leveling up and they're trying to, they're waiting for their window of opportunity and then obviously the piece kind of uses and jumps into that window of opportunity.
So, do you think that either Sam Hyde or Nick Fuentes are anti-Semitic, or whatever that phrase means?
Your question itself, it's so key and central to, I think, what we is like. First of all, what are the definitions? I personally don't. I think there's some understandable, casual, what I would call like mid-century or early 20th century casual Gentile anti-Semitism of the kind of like T.S. Eliot or any WASP, overlord of any period up until about 1955. That like there's a kind of a casual jokingness, a little bit of base suspicion, and a kind of an otherness. I don't think those things. I think those things are natural. I know you and I share an affinity for sort of, you know, basically doing away with civil rights legislation. I think that's part and parcel of this is kind of freedom of association, meaning freedom to dissociate from groups we don't love, want to live around, don't need to be mastered by or participate with. So I think that, yes, you could take things out of context and be like, that's pretty of either Hyde and Fuentes, and be like, yeah, that's very anti-Semitic. I think that if you look at it as the whole and see like if 1% of Nick's spiel is about the Jews or Israel or Zionism, then I don't really regard that as anti-Semitic in the same way that I don't regard myself as like a hateful racist because I, choose to live around certain people.
Well, so okay, well then how would you define anti-Semitism then? What's the definition of anti-Semitism?
Jews that haven't given me their money.
Okay.
No, it's a great question. I don't think about it because it's so. I don't know. I think the social engineering cultural context is like, Jews are other and should be othered and kind of treated as a special class, both good and bad. Obviously with Israel, things get really complicated really fast because it's race, it's religion, it's people. Then there's a sovereign nation, how that relates to the beginnings of Zionism, how that's become distorted over the years. So obviously in our discourse, if you're critical of Israel, you can get branded an anti-Semite. It's been around our politics for a long time, at least since the founding of the state in 48. So, and it's gone through perturbations. Like the right, would have been branded anti-Semitic for many decades in an older definition. And today, just saying, listen, I don't bear any ill will towards Israel. I just don't want my congressman traveling there and kissing the wall every 6 months.
Right.
I don't want them signing bombs, right, that are going to be dropped on other brown people, having just kind of come out of a 20-year series of forever wars in the Middle East. I think there's a lot of very natural suspicion. I realize that's a terrible answer to your question. I don't know what anti-Semitism is, and I don't really care. Like, I think at this point, the word and the term and the framing and usage of it is so, it's just like bland. It's so blank at this point. Just like me being, I get called a Nazi on Facebook. At some point, you're just like, yeah, whatever, I'm a Nazi, or yeah, I'm a misogynist, or yeah, I'm a Yankee fan. Like, sure, man, if that's what we're gonna do. I'm not sure what anti-Semitic is. Do you have a better answer?
Well, so look, I used to be much more obsessed with this than I am today. So about, I don't know, almost a decade ago now, probably, I was which you already know this, but just for the listeners, I was a guest on this show called TRS, which is The Right Stuff, or it's called The Daily Show. I don't remember even really which one this was, but I ended up on that show because I, like you, it's kind of a forbidden knowledge thing, right? You're like, okay, well, what's the worst thing that you're really not supposed to like learn about? And it's learning about like Nazi stuff. And it's also just like, how can a thinking person actually just think the Nazis are, like Disney grade evil, right? Like that doesn't really exist. And Jews themselves, who actually study the religion, would say that men are not evil. You cannot be an evil man. You can have distance from God, but there's no such thing as evil. There's only distance and closeness to God, right? And it's like if you get really lost, sure, you can be very far away from God, but it's not like you're possessed with some special devil force, right? And that's how Hitler was portrayed. Hitler is portrayed as the absolute evil. He's Voldemort. He's the end of everything. And then just as a thinking person, you're like, well, okay, what's the real story there, right? Because he's just a human being like everybody else, and like, how did that happen? And what's the real story? So then you start looking into it. And you, like any thread that you tug on anything, you start to see, oh, well, the story that I was told about this is not really true. The Holocaust is real and World War II is real, but it's not just like, the way that it was taught I think this is probably changing, especially because now everybody's anti-Semitic. But the way that the Holocaust was taught to me growing up was one day Hitler woke up and just decided that Jews were bad, and it was like he was going to blame the scapegoat thing, right? They were having problems, and Jews were just this innocent, poor people standing around, and Hitler was like, you know what? Let's beat up on this poor random group of people, which is so obviously not the case, right? That's just very obviously not real life. That's not what actually occurred, or that's just completely ridiculous. So you start to be like, okay, well, what was actually going on? And I remember actually one of the first videos I saw, this was a YouTube video of some German guy, and he was like, this was so long ago, but he was like, he said something like, yeah, Jews controlled, 65% of the wealth in Berlin at this time. And they made up, 0.1% of the population. And then that just immediately struck me. And I was like, well, wait a second. That's weird. I never heard that. I thought they were just some random group. Like I thought they were just some random, thing. And that's when you start looking into it and blah, 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 blah. And then you go down the rabbit hole, and then you're kind of, infected with anti-Semitism for years, which I was. So but one of the things that brought me out of that period was I went on this show, TRS, and I was not an online person at all. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't understand what I was getting into in any way. I literally just emailed them, and I was very much like you, Zach. I emailed them and I was like, hey, I'm interested to hear what you guys say about this. I'm Jewish. Let's talk about it. And lo and behold, they said, sure, come on. And I was like, all right. And I remember the day of, I was like driving and I was late. So I was like late to go to their thing. And I thought these were just like two totally unknown schmucks. I had no idea that they had like a following of hundreds of thousands of people. I had no clue. So I went on there. I was all late, and like I was like in the car and like talking, and I thought it was like, 10 people are listening. I didn't realize it was like 100,000 people were listening. And I was shocked. I was genuinely shocked. I'm glad I did. This is how I do things in life. I like immerse myself and I find out, right? And I'm really glad that I did it that way, because I faced like straight on what they meant by the ethno-state. Like they laid it out. And I'd never heard that before. I had never heard about this. I had never heard this whole ideology. And, basically their ideology is like, hey, look, not all Jews are bad, but most are, 90% are. And therefore we'd just be better off without the whole group, right? And it's like, ugh, God, that's fucking rough, because it's like, okay, it's a compelling argument, right? I mean, it's like if you have a friend in your life that's 90% toxic and 10% good, it's better to get him out of your life, right? So it's like, how do you argue that? You know what I'm saying? How do you argue against that? And it was terrifying. It was terrifying to imagine. I mean, it was terrifying to think that me, good guy, could be lumped in, right? And I was like, well, fuck that. I don't want that. I don't want to be lumped in, like I don't deserve that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to like a little bit of Daryl Cooper's idea, like the idea that the Germans just like became demonically possessed one day in 1934, and for 6 or 7 years were just like, bleh, right? They just went nuts and decided, and then come the end of the war, they turned that off and just became normal Europeans again.
Yeah.
So, that kind of thing. Although your 90-10 thing, I mean, like, listen, I think the smarter anti-Semites or people who are suspicious or sick of, they say, listen, there's a difference between Jews as an individual and Jews as a people. I kind of agree. I think that's true with everyone, but that's like as good as it gets. I don't want to be lumped in to, international Jewry, which is a thing. It takes on various guises. I've seen it. I've seen it up close. I know how it operates. In some ways, there's plenty I don't know. I have people I went to school with and synagogue with in New York, where I'm from, who are active members of quote unquote what many people would consider, including myself, international Jewry. They are, doctors and bankers and hedge fund guys who give a lot of money to any number of Zionist or American Jewish causes. It's not just AIPAC. There's synagogues. There's Aish Torah. There's Chabad. There's international organizations that do different things. There's Hollywood. There's media. There's theater. There's a lot of different ways. It's not that Jews control all of it. I think in the recent conversations we've had, you had a great conversation with our mutual Rambo Van Halen recently, and he talked a little bit about that dynamic in Hollywood and how it's not really so true anymore. But I mean, you mentioned sort of growing up with the propaganda of the Holocaust. Like, how much of that could you even separate that from the 25 World War II movies that you saw between 1985 and 2020?
Right.
What would you think had you not, seen Saving Private Ryan and being told it was a world historical movie, or Schindler's List, right? And realizing that you could go all the way back to 1948, and there's a lot of movies that were every few months or every few years really shaping opinion, getting prizes and being told these are important movies for that's reason why. I think what's interesting is how the cultural Marxism or communism or Bolshevism that's starting to bubble up again, and that's here and has infected, 10 to 20% of the American left, maybe more, like that oppressive thing has now turned on. I think that's what we saw with the Hamas, maybe false flag into Israel, blah, 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 and everything that's happened since is like, wait, Jews as like left-wing social justice warriors, tip of the sphere, right? As Sam Hyde put it in his recent film or video on Charlie Kirk, he said, it wasn't because Mr. Jew and his bow tie took a bus to Washington, D.C. in 1965 that we have freedom. Like, that's not what happened. And I think like that's the great thing about Hyde is he has this flippant, like amazing way to capture something like, yeah, Mr. Jew with bow tie riding a bus to Mississippi or Selma or DC somewhere between 1958 and 1966 is the reason that black people got freedom, right? Like, that's bullshit.
Well, but
right?
that's
and
actually
yes,
one time.
Right?
Well, right, but that's one time where the anti-Semites are on both sides of it. Because they're saying it's not because of that, but it also is because of that, right? Because they're also saying, well, it's Jewish subversion that is the reason that these civil rights actions had Jews, and that's true. I mean, like, I'm not saying it's because of Jewish subversion, but it's definitely Jewish money and Jewish interests played a massive role in securing civil rights in all sorts of ways. Because the Jews were, wanted parity with the WASPs in terms of control, in terms of power, in terms of, membership into the club. And that's absolutely what happened. It's not, that's not anti-Semitic. Look at the case of all civil rights litigation. It's all kinds of Jews either suing on behalf of blacks or on behalf of themselves to not be excluded or to not have this is not civil rights exactly. This is establishment clause, but not have prayer in school, blah, blah, blah. Like so much of that comes from Jewish organizations, that sort of thing. And it's like, look, that's fine. Is that subversive? Yes, it is subversive. And is that Judaism? Not really, though. That's what I used to think. I used to think that was what Jewishness was, right? But you can't both say that they didn't do it and they did do it. Like, which is it? Did they do it or did they not do it? It's like, this is the problem with anti-Semitism. This is where I think anti-Semitism is. And this is, I know it because I fell into this. This was me for a while. You're saying it's all Jews, right? You're saying both sides of it are. You're saying they didn't do the Civil Rights Act and that's all a lie, and they did do it, right? It's like you got to pick one. You got to say which one is it, right?
You know what it reminds me of? You know how we talk about like comics, like Dave Smith gets this a lot, where like they can put on their comic clown, man, I'm just a comic. Don't look at me for your information about, World War III. I'm just a silly comic. And then like, oh, but I can also tell Douglas Murray to stuff it because he's a neocon warmonger and also be right. So I feel like Jews today have, the ability to, for lack of a better word, shapeshift, to be like, well, I'm a secular Jew, and like I'm a religious anti-Zionist, right? Like I love the anti-Zionist Hasids. They're hysterical. They're like, yeah, no, Israel's an abomination. That's ridiculous.
Many
Only
of them
God.
are like that. Yes, yeah, many of
them. Yeah, and obviously we are in the middle of our high holiday. So Happy New Year to you. I for the first time in a long time participated in some activities here in Boulder. It was some just mild blood libel, but nothing too bad. Poisoning of wells and such. But it is. It's like there is a shape-shifting quality. Like there's American Jews, there's Reformed Jews who I have a dear friend from the South. He reached out when I published the piece. I hadn't talked to him in a while, and he was telling me about his grandparents who were Reformed Jews who thought that Zionist secular Jews in Israel it was gonna be bad for us. It was gonna be bad for Jewry worldwide. This is like in the 40s and 50s in America. There were Reformed Jews who were like, yeah, having a state, like why we have America, just come here. Why would we be there, right? And they were in conflict with like religious Jews and even conservative Jews in the North who were more active, more Zionist, wealthier, shared more of, got involved in things, Jews in the South, like Jews in the South, there was not a ton of them, but it wasn't minimal either. You'll find temples in Charleston and Savannah, in Oxford, Mississippi, in Corpus Christi, Texas, in Tennessee, throughout the Virginia, no doubt there's a thing, but like they weren't agitating for civil rights for blacks, really. That was Northern Jews that were taking the bus down. And I mean, you could go back into their history. Those were the kids who, and kids, I mean, teenagers, college kids, maybe graduate students in the late 50s and 60s who were involved in civil rights. They were the children of like FDR Democrats, like Jewish FDR Democrats, right? Who were not communists, right? Definitely overlooked Stalin's worst crimes, right? Walter Duranty style. New York Times was their Bible. But were very progressive and,
but there's something in it. Are you saying that this is the thing that I don't agree with the Jewish explanation on, which is, are you saying that the reason that Jews are the way that they are is because they've been outsiders forever, and so this is just naturally what happens when you're excluded over periods of time, and then eventually, you become this sort of outside force. That's just the natural way. And then you're a banker, then you're loaning at interest because that's what you can do, because you're not allowed to do, the other people can't do it. You can't do shit.
You can't own land. Yeah. If you can't own land in Poland for 300 years, you're going to get good at other things, right? Like trading and merchants and compound interest and violin and telling jokes in the shtetl and studying the Talmud. You're going to get good at critical thinking and joke making and, making awful, desserts. Listen, I think that I'm less concerned with the figuring out the Jewish question and how we got here and where we're going. Like, you said this to me a few months ago when we were just starting to chat, and I was, before I wrote the Hyde Fuentes piece, I was sort of telling you that how I was fascinated by, Pete Quinones and Thomas and some of these other guys that I found really bright and incredibly smart and passionate. And I was aligned with on 98 or 92% of our platform when it came to civil rights and freedom and prosperity and bureaucracy and COVID and the Ukraine, like on everything else. And then there'd be some Jew jokes. So there'd be a nasty aside. And I'd just be like, I don't care. I'm not, it doesn't grate me. I'm an adult. I have thick skin. And if you don't have thick skin in this life, you're not going to make it. I don't know what to tell you. It's rough. We are political brawlers. And yes, these two blokes are Jewish. I was going to say that, you said something to me, which was, we're wanderers by nature. You were trying to help me feel better, right? And I think it's true. I think that doesn't mean we can't settle at times. But I started this by saying I'm a truth seeker, and I'm going to take that wherever it follows me, and if wherever that takes me, and if that takes me to a place where I look around and most of the people I'm with are pretty anti-Zionist, not maybe a little bit anti-Semitic, but they treat me well, they treat me fairly, they're not about to cattle car me. I'm okay with that. I don't right. think a Holocaust. I don't live in constant fear of persecution, or my persecution is much more white male Republican based politics than it is. Which would be accurate,
exactly. Yeah, right.
And I pass, man. I'm blonde.
Well, and now this sweeping leftism, this sweeping leftist Leviathan is totally a golem from the left-wing part of the Jewish community. It's not all Jews. Many Jews have been fighting for nationalism for a long time. And people will laugh at me saying not all. This is, again, it's like when you start getting this anti-Semitism in your brain, you start thinking like an anti-Semite. So you're always catching yourself saying not all, then they have some sound on the soundboard, not all Jews. But anyway, there's been plenty on both sides. But
what's funny?
Yeah. What?
What I was going to say is, as I put these people in my head, listened to hundreds of hours of podcasts, all the films, went back, both Nick, Sam, Thomas, Oren, yourself, just this whole Tucker, some of the more fringe guys, what's that guy's name? Handsome gent, the real nutty people out there, like Stu Peters. To me, I've had so much of it in here that I'm like, I have anti-Semite brain where I'm like, oh yeah, I wake up, it's like, oh, it's raining today, it's the Jews.
Yeah, no, dude, I went through a period. I was so obsessed. I wrote Dan Carlin a several page letter saying you need to do the history of the Jews because you're the only guy people will listen to do it correctly. And then little did I know, Martyr Maid was already doing that. So no, it was something I was obsessed with too. And I think this is why Jews are self-hating though, because we are people who are kind of buckled in. The reason ultimately why I think, first of all, every people has evolutionary advantages. Every people has flaws. Every people has certain things they do, certain things they don't do, right? And look, the flaws of white people, if we're saying Jews aren't white people, which they obviously are, but the flaws of, the Western European is self-hatred. The flaw of the Western European is being nice. They're too nice, right? And now that's being used to destroy them. They're now being destroyed by their own inability to not get cucked by people, right? And so the Jewish people, our people, I'm only half. I think you're full, right? You're a full on. You're a full vampire. I'm Daywalker, half and half. But our strength, and I see this in myself, is we are subversive, but that's not always bad. Subversion is good and bad. It's 50% bad, 50% good. If you do it all the time very badly, then yes, that's very bad. But change is what life is. Change is beauty. Change is, there's the Apollonian and the Dionysian. The Dionysian is just as necessary. You have to have subversion in your society, or else you're going to be, totally lame and totally boring. You go to societies that don't change, they're terrible. You want to go see a society that doesn't change? Go to Africa. It's been the same for 7,000 years. So, change and pushing social change and fighting for justice, right? Like those Jews who we are so fucking unbearably goddamn annoying that we fucking hate, these, the marching in Selma Jews, right? They aren't sitting around getting their orders from Israel to go infiltrate America. They have it in their hearts. They really believe it. I know because I am one of these fucking people. I am subverting everything that I grew up with, right? I grew up with total far leftist, Jewish liberalism as that's God. Obama is God. That's what I grew up with. I'm subverting that with righteous fury. That's the most Jewish fucking possible thing. Jesus is a deeply Jewish figure because he's a subverter, right? He is somebody who's saying this is bullshit. We need to fight for something higher. And Jews really do that. Can that instinct totally get warped and fucked up to the point where instead of doing that, you're offering compound interest on coins that you're selling to boomers? Yes, you can misuse your powers for sure, but that doesn't mean that the whole fucking thing has to be thrown out. Now, the part I'll agree with you with, and the part we should get back to Fuentes. The part I'll agree with certainly with Fuentes on is you got to be allowed to talk about it. You can't ban people from having these discussions. It's just not you could understand banning it right after World War II, which happened, but you can't ban it forever. You're not going to make it so that it is illegal to criticize Jews for the rest of fucking time. And having those laws is completely stupid. So that's why it's like somebody like Fuentes, I get the fury, right? I get the fury because he's like, why are you telling me I can't say this? This is my country. So yeah, is that why you're attracted to him?
I just think he's incredibly talented. I appreciate, even though I'm older than his audience, what I really detect in both the Fuentes and Hyde shtick is that the way that they talk to their audiences is they're leading them along. I mean, all popular podcasters are doing that, but they're doing it in a very self-conscious way where like the Groypers today are much different, even though some of them, it's a big audience. The way that they're leading their audience is very practical. It's very DIY. It's very, frankly, patron-like. They're acting, and Nick in particular, like he's obviously even his most vile enemies talk about his talent, right? In that Tucker interview where he kind of made that aside about that weird little sad gay kid in his basement. Right before that, Tucker said he's incredibly smart and talented. So like I'm just attracted to the talent of weaving narrative, news, opinion, and an original voice into a coherent whole. Tucker said that about Nick, like, hey man, it is not easy staring into a camera in an empty room a week for 2 or 3 hours and there not be a lot of dead air. That the ability to have a flow of narrative, of entertainment, of education I'm just like that's raw power. And I mean, I don't know if I should introduce this, but like kind of reminds me a lot about Hitler. I do not think Nick Fuentes is going to be Hitler, But like Hitler's power, if you know, and I've read quite a bit about Hitler, was like his ability to talk and his ability to connect with audiences in a really natural way and weave stories and narratives and themes on an emotional level. I'm not saying that he whipped people into a fervor, although he did. And like, frankly, these are people who don't have a ton of other skills. He wasn't a great soldier, although he was brave, talking about Hitler. He wasn't a great artist, although he worked hard and had some talent.
I think he was a pretty good soldier, actually. I think he was a good soldier. He was like borderline war hero. He was like I think he won medals.
He got awarded several. He did. I mean, he was basically he was very good at delivering messages in very dangerous areas. He wasn't a hand-to-hand combat expert, and he wasn't like a chud, Gorgon the Destroyer, who was like decapitating French, Jean-Claude's left and right. He had his role, but where he really started to shine was when he would basically beer halls talking to people, and 5 people became 15, became 50, became 500, became holy shit, this guy's motivating people. I'm not saying that Fuentes.
It's not exactly correct. Yes, he was absolutely an extraordinarily gifted orator, and everybody says that from day one. He was, very respected in that way. But it's not like he just was. I mean, what's incredible about Hitler is that he was. The reason why it's so perfect for the Jewish story that this is their dragon, right? That this is their antithesis, is that he's so similar. Like actually his whole party, when he was coming up, kept accusing him of being Jewish. They kept saying, stop acting so Jewy. Yeah. Because he was very extremely manipulative. He was extremely rhetorical. He was all the things that you normally, he was criticizing Jews of being. That was his thing. And also, he was a complete outcast. He was totally down and out. That's what the most amazing thing about Hitler to me, more than anything else. I can't think of another leader ever that truly came from nothing. Like, Hitler came from nothing. He was a absolute homeless guy on the streets of Vienna. Like, literally. He was a literal homeless guy wearing like a trench coat. Everybody was starving, and he becomes the leader of the nation. I mean, it's like Jews. How can Jews resist the story? It's like the most Jewish. We love this shit. So that's why it's such a great irony. But in that sense, he did join in. The National Socialists already existed, and he plugged in to them. He didn't make that up. He then branded it. He came up with the swastika and stuff, but he did join an existing movement.
Yeah, no, for sure. And listen, we don't need to talk about Hitler too much. I think that the point is the power of oratory is something I respond to. Like, I want to be inspired. I want to be taken away. I want to be elevated. I think that frankly, our leadership class is degenerate. And I like Trump. I've never been Mr. Trump guy. I get how he talks, but I don't love his oratory. I get that it's not for me. I grew up with him in New York City as a kind of a buffoon, clownish guy, so I never really had a strong reaction to him. I didn't vote for him until 2024. I was still a leftist populist until basically until COVID. I was like a Bernie left-winger, kind of, to a certain extent. But the power of oratory in our world, with podcasts taking over, not just like news, but like Jimmy Kimmel gets 1 million people a night and he's on broadcast TV. If you add it up, Nick and Oren and yourself and 5 other people, it would be 20x that every day. So, I mean, to me, this is like a great outpouring of of real populism is coming. Like that. It's interesting that the Kimmel and the Colbert thing is happening amidst the rise of these other wonderful orators who aren't full of shit and don't have to. They might be full of shit in a different way, but they're not full of shit for a regime and regime narrative framing that is clearly dead.
Yeah,
it is dead. It's over.
Well, and you do get the sense.
There's no natural.
Yeah. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep going.
No, go ahead. There's no natural for regime framing. It's dead. The regime knows it's dead. Woke is dead. They're not able. The left is in serious trouble, right? Like I'm feeling very positive these days because we're only 6 or 7 months into Trump, and the left is like way worse today than 3 months ago. Like, I honestly, they're in big trouble on the left. I can't believe these words are going to. They need deprogramming. I was shocked at the Charlie Kirk thing. I did not think you would have normies celebrating death. They have a big problem. They're going to be out of power for a long time. I don't even know what's going on the left. I don't know who their leader is. I don't know what their message is.
Well, right.
And I'm looking.
Their message is we're going to fuck. You know, it's funny that we say on our side, we're going to fucking kill you. They're actually doing it. They don't say it as much, but they say it a little less jokingly, but they are now killing us. That's their whole thing. And the unfortunate, really sad, dark thing about that is that's kind of sticky, you know? Like when your side is the one that's dying in these blazes of horrible murder, you know, I don't think it should be celebrated in any way at all. And the normal person, it's true, is turned off by that, which is why I think the right should actually shift center now. But at the same time, that's their new message. Their new message is, hey, we're going all the way. We're killing him. We're going to kill him now. And they're getting away with it. That's the fucked up thing. They're doing it. And what are we doing in response? Nothing. Because there's nothing we can do. We don't have the networks that they have. We don't have violent, programmed incel trannies waiting to shoot people up. We just don't have that. So, and we don't have protest networks. We don't have shrill college Asian girls. Like, we don't have any of that. So, you know, we don't have it. But what we do have is the truth, which is that we have jobs and shit, which is actually what most people want. And at least you used to be able to do it in America. I mean, I think maybe it was you that said this, is that this is all actually a function of economic depression, which is that the normal average person cannot afford shit anymore. And that's why they start really hating other people in a much more profound way than I think we've ever seen, maybe in America. And that's just because of the drastic economic decline. In any case, let's get back to Fuentes. So the one thing I'll say about him is he does seem, all these fucking influencers on the right, they all want so badly to be Rush Limbaugh, right? Because they grew up with it. I didn't even, you know, Rush Limbaugh in my household growing up was Satan. He might as well be the actual literal devil, according to my dad and mom. So I didn't listen to him. I know nothing about it. I never listened to Rush Limbaugh ever. So I didn't have this relationship with Rush Limbaugh. But I know that in being in our conservative or, you know, our right-wing sphere now, in talking to people, including Charlie Kirk, who I actually talked to directly about this, he looms so large. He's like the guy. Like for them, like growing up, like a young conservative or even somebody, you know, switching sides, Rush Limbaugh was like it's like movies for me. It was like, it's their, you know, Apocalypse Now was Rush Limbaugh. Because that's what the right loves, this like rhetorical debate kid shit. And so on the right, they love like oratory and vibe and like ability to articulate yourself in this way. They love it. And the only guy on the right that I've seen that has it really is Fuentes. And he really has it. And there's something about the way that he talks. He's got a mix of humor. He's got a mix of I don't give a shit. It's just the way he kind of moves his hands around. Everybody says he's completely full of shit. Everybody I talk to, people who've known him way longer than I have, say, hey, be careful of this guy. He's a liar. He's gay. He's all these fucking things. But if you just watch him without knowing all that other shit, which I don't know the history, he's pretty fucking amazing. I mean, he really has that gift that I don't really think anybody on the right has. I mean, who else has that? You know, I mean, yeah, I don't think anybody has.
You know, to your point, I mean, I read a whole Substack about his hands. He's got these really long fingers, and people are like fascinated by his hands. He's got this hand thing. Yeah, he'd be a great guitar player. But I think that in the piece, I make the point that like, and he knows this, so he's acting it out. And there's a lot of self-referentiality, which is, I know that even that the GOP establishment, that Con Inc., that Republicans, that even Trump don't want to be America first. I am that. All I have to do is stick to my guns. Listen, we got a lot of comments on the piece, you and I, this weekend, where like, he's a Fed, he's controlled opposition, he got the call from Israel, he took the $100 million that was going to go to whatever. If it's true, it'll come out, or it'll eventually be obvious, right? That's, I believe, over time it'll be obvious. Just because he didn't jump to blame Israel, blame Kirk's slaughter on Netanyahu, like all of a sudden he got the call. It's just ridiculous. He's now leveled up. He's in the firing line. He's over the target, so he's going to get a lot of flack. I think that the point that I try to make in the piece for Sam Hyde as well is that these guys haven't changed the tack. When Hyde looked at the camera and said, "Arabs, get out," or "Dear Elon, no, we love you. We know you're not one of us. You just became a Republican 3 months ago. We know you're a San Francisco internationalist, transhumanist. We still love you because you did one big thing for us, which was you bought Twitter and you freed us and you freed the grapers and you made it at least more free." Is it fully free? No, of course not. So they have the benefit of just stick to your guns of the original America First principles of like, shut the border, build the wall, deport illegals, stop the wars, stop getting involved in the Middle East, like focus on America as a people, not a proposition, right? It's a specific people. Focus on this country, whether that's through tariffs, protectionism, investment, whatever, deporting illegals, making it difficult to be in this society, getting rid of benefits. Like, if you do that for 10 years, the country will be more prosperous. To your point that like, it is about economics, I agree with that. Like, underneath all of this is the world is 3 times more expensive today than it was basically a decade ago. And like, we can bitch and moan about like inflation being transitory under Biden or rate cuts. It's missing the point. This is a very shaky economy. Housing and immigration are intrinsically related. So all that, to your point about Fuentes, he's going to, until those issues are solved, and I don't know if they're going to be, we still don't really have mass deportations. The border, from what I can tell, is mostly shut. But, every time, there was an H-1B thing, which the whole piece started as, and for those just joining us, please, do go to Substack and we'll post the links. Please give it a read, give it a comment, share it. The whole jumping off point was Vivek's kind of tone deaf H-1B manifesto about like American kids being lazy and too interested in being jocks and, having sleepovers, as opposed to, offspring of tiger moms who went to math competitions and played violin all the time, right? Interestingly enough, last week, 2 weeks ago, the administration comes out, signs an executive order about adding a fee to H-1Bs, limiting it. They immediately walk it back 24 hours later. Literally, you got Howard Lutnick and Carolyn Levitt. Carolyn? Who's the press secretary? Carolyn?
I don't even know.
Who's great, but she's literally, it was going to be $100,000 per year per worker. Then it's $100,000 once. And so these guys, until America First principles are instilled, like, the base isn't going anywhere on this. And here's an interesting point, and this is a good pivot for you. You said, well, the right should tax center. I think we're in a big tent right now, and big tents are fractious by nature. It's, it's a lot going on underneath that carnival tent right now. You've got RFK, you've got JD Vance, you've got the tech bros, you've got Hyde, Fuentes, you've got the religious types, Orthodox Catholics. You've got some, there's a lot. I think I can circle back on where Jews fall in all this again. Maybe that's where we end up eventually. But like, until America First principles are put in place and practice, this will just continue to be a thing. It will destroy everything in its path. I wouldn't be surprised if it takes down Trump. I don't want to see Trump taken down, but if he does not mass deport and or at least to the point where you can see housing prices come down and insurance prices come down and just the economy gets better intuitively, then it will take him down. It'll be ironic that the guy who got elected to do the one thing just can't bring himself to do it, or there are reasons why it can't be done, right? The economy would collapse.
Right. So your point that you're trying to make in the piece is that everybody else has kind of abandoned America first. And thus, Fuentes and Sam Hyde are really the last two people who are really sticking to it. And it's funny because both of them have sort of the same chip on their shoulder. They both have sort of the same cut of their jib. Of course, Fuentes is much more serious, but they both, what's so pleasing about watching both of them is that they just say whatever, right? They say they don't censor themselves at all, right? They say exactly what they want to say, which is so refreshing and it's so charismatic and good. Now, Sam Hyde, I'll agree, he probably is like a real America First guy, right? In terms of what he wants genuinely Americans prioritized above other people, which is obviously what we should have. That's what I am. I'm America First. That's exactly the same thing. I mean, I'm what you would call there should be an organization that, maybe we can create called Jews for America, where we are saying we're Jewish, but we care about America more than Israel, right? I mean, that's what I am. And the funny thing is, that's what the people are going to say. Oh my God, go kill Isaac. Go talk to any Chabadnik on the street. They're going to tell you the same fucking thing. They don't like the government of Israel either, right? And they care more for different reasons. I care for the same reason that Nick Fuentes does, which is I don't like the meddling in the country of America. That's not good. It's not good for anybody. It's not. You think it's good for Jews? Look at where we're at now. Now everybody fucking hates us in the whole world. And okay, so did this really work out? Like, yeah, okay, maybe it worked for 60 years and now it's crumbling. So, look, Tablet Magazine.
It's fluid now.
Tablet Magazine, a great Jewish-based publication who does great work and on a lot of fronts. They have articles making this exact argument. Stop doing this funding. America should stop funding Israel. Israel should stop fucking meddling in constantly canceling people, trying to outlaw anti-Semitism, all the AIPAC shit. It just doesn't work forever. You can do it for a little while, but then eventually it doesn't work. And although I will say, Jews are so much more effective against the right than they are the left. They get eaten up by the left because it's like the best book about this. Have you ever read American Pastoral? Best book about this ever written.
Yeah, of course. The
Swede. The Swede, and it's the perfect story because it's about a Jew who wants to just be a total blonde American boss, leaves behind Judaism, does everything right. He completely assimilates in every way. He's a great baseball player, and then his kid becomes his kid's like fat and Jewish and becomes a member of the Weather Underground and blows up a post office, and it's just like the inevitability, right, of this happening. So it's like I just personally believe. First of all, I have lineage to the beginning of America on my other side, so I care about America first. I hate to say, I don't really care about Israel. Do I care about Israel in the very practical sense of, do I want to get killed by the hosts of the TRS podcast or by Nick Fuentes? No, I do not want that. And so, of course, there's some fear element in my being that is like, well, hey, let's not go too far, which is, hey, can you blame me for this? Who knows? But basically, in my heart of hearts, I am 100% America first. So I agree with that. Is Fuentes, though, really America first? I don't know. Because this whole stuff about being anti-Trump the whole time, what was really weird about him? The thing that really made me think there's something else going on here, when everybody was calling J.D. Vance weird, Fuentes came right out of the gate and started calling JD Vance weird for all these really stupid reasons. Like very like talking points memo-y reasons. Like he changed his name 4 times. It's like that's bullshit. If you actually look into why he did it, there's nothing there. And so that was very weird to me. And if you track Fuentes a lot of the time, he goes against he's like Dem. He always somehow manages to take the side of the Dems. So it's like that's not fucking America first. You're constantly undermining Trump like all the time, going against him, trying to fracture the coalition. Like that's not America first. Right?
Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of a young guy with youthful reaction, like emotionality getting the best of him. I call it like his Rococo style, where like he didn't really want Kamala Harris. But when he said don't vote for Trump, which I think he kind of said before the 2024 election, it was because he was pissed off about something, and he's going to have to get a handle on that. I do agree with you that I think that he's so used to being contrarian that it can get you into trouble when you're like, why are you being contrarian just to be contrarian? Listen, I don't know if he's controlled opposition. Nobody can know that. If somebody wants to publish documents or a video, we can all assess for ourselves. If James O'Keefe and OMG Media want to infiltrate the Fuentes circle, like go ahead. Listen, I don't have a good answer for you because I think it's just too soon to tell where this is all going to end up. I'm sort of like, hey, it's only been 7 months. We've got 3 more years here, and with the midterms a year away. Like a lot's going to happen between now and then. I'm sort of excited. I don't know. I think my tendency is that he just throws tantrums. That he throws little tantrums because he's 27. He's growing very quickly. I can't imagine. First of all, he had an assassination attempt. So as far as we know, a guy showed up at his house in Chicago. This was right before.
Or this is a different thing.
It was a guy in a bike helmet with a crossbow and a gun who had killed 2 people early in the day, and then like fled into a neighbor's yard, killed a dog, then got shot by Chicago PD. This is a 27-year-old who's probably making really good money now. He relaunched America First. He's got $100 subscription here, right? Nobody has the audacity to do that because there's like a private Telegram chat. He's making a ton of money, and I don't even think he's financially motivated. I mean, he should do well. He should buy some nice suits and do it and take some vacations and maybe try dating a girl for once. I think he is talking a lot more about that. I think he hears that like he's going to be more powerful. He starts to settle down. I wouldn't be surprised if he's engaged before the next election or shortly thereafter. He knows, by the way, same with Sam, similar, like these guys know that they're leaders now reluctantly, but like you've got to lead by example. And if Nick is going to sit there and critique, which he does, JD Vance's brown wife and her Hindu sounding and looking kids, that he better have. He does a lot. He's like, yeah, she's brown and his kid's name is Vivek and they're brown as hell. And like, whatever. I think that's probably the new coalition. Nick better have 3 very white children before the time he's 40, if not 5, right? Yeah. I think there's, you said something a few minutes ago that I think is really important. You talked about how it, Zionism, international Jewry kind of worked for like the last 60 years. And then I think October 7th, I think it was starting to fracture already. October 7th, the Hamas attack and everything that's happened since, everything that's happened with like hate speech laws for Israel and kids getting deported because they're pro-Palestinian and Jordan to the Sea stuff and the Ivy League stuff. Like that's so bad for Israel. It's so bad for Jews in America. It's so bad for Jews in Israel. It's bad for the state of Israel to have these like, oh yeah, we're back to free speech unless you're, criticizing Israel in America, then we're definitely not free speech. That's just, this is one example.
Well, right. I mean, that's the great hypocrisy that has disgusted me my entire life. I mean, you grew up much more in contact with like elite Jews than I did. I grew up with very typical run-of-the-mill, upper middle class, creative class, academia type Jews. And those people really set the agenda for the rest, if you want to know the truth. I think that the upper middle class Jew actually was more the leader of what Judaism became than the really upper class one, right? It was all about liberal stuff and art, and the art stuff is good. Yeah, you can't be mad at the art stuff, but at least insofar, like, God, see, it's like I have anti-Semite brain. I immediately go, oh, but what about postmodernism? What about fucking these stupid, ugly paintings in the art museum? The Jews, 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 and it's like, yeah, well, that's fucking true. But there's also plenty of great Jewish art.
I think Mark Rothko is beautiful.
Yeah, anybody who doesn't get Rothko, you go to the Rothko Temple. It's Houston. It's the cure to not understanding Rothko.
Houston,
yeah. But anyway, so. I can't fucking remember. What were we just talking about?
Well, I was going to say that I think people like you and I, and there's a lot of us, are starting to paint a pathway forward. We could circle back. I believe that, like, the Jewish I know there's some tension around the term Judeo-Christian. I think that there's some fair critique of that, but I ultimately think that Jews and Protestants with a smattering of Catholics working together in the West, particularly in America, is a fucking superpower that I'd like to see, like, embraced again. And I mean, if you look at the Trump administration, imperfect though it is, like the actual administration, the cabinet, it's kind of like 1935 or 1948 America, like the good parts, the great parts that turned us into a superpower,
right?
Like beyond anything the world had seen.
This is the thing. It's like
that's where I'm putting my effort.
Right.
Good.
No, sorry. Keep going.
I'm what I'm working towards is, and I work with guys. You're familiar with the Hard Reset magazine. There's other streamers and creative projects that are starting to cohere. You've got a bunch. I want to be the guy that anti-Semites or people who could be termed that are like, I work with 3 Jewish guys. They're fucking stand up. They love this country. They're real. And I'm personally not worried about being put on a cattle car. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not worried about emboldening like the far right and then having it turn on me. Like, I'm just, even if that is a thing, what does fearing that get me?
Okay, well, so here, this is a great point for us to disagree on. So can I just disagree with you really quick?
Sure.
Okay, so
please.
Here's the part where this is why I say anti-Semitism is a disease that lasts 3 to 5 years. I think Fuentes is coming out of it himself. But as a self-hating version of that, I spent years of my life as a fucking adult trying to show people that I was one of the good Jews, right? Like trying to be like, I'm one of the good ones. And this happened. I had 3 different employees have various versions of anti-Semitic like breakdowns towards me. And all of those guys were guys that I began the relationship knowing they were like that, knowing they had a certain Jew obsession, right? But wanting to show them, no, I'm one of we're not all bad. Trust me, there's good ones of us out there. And also, yeah, the Pete Quinonez's of the world, that sort of crew, right? I don't think they're bad guys. I don't think they want to just kill every Jew at all. And I think they're basically good people who are trying to do good stuff. However, the instinct that I have around those people is always to show them that I'm like one of the good ones, right? And I do find that those people indulge in that. Right? They hold themselves out and they're like, oh, well, I'll decide, okay, Jew here. Oh, but he's a good one, but we can't, like, maybe he's borderline. They since they feel deprived of power, they have assigned their power to deciding which people are Jews and which people are not Jews, right? And that's how they feel like, oh, I've regained my power. And I'm not going to fucking give them that. That's fucking bullshit. I'm more American than most of those people. My fucking grandparents were Mayflower, literally. I have it right here. and you're gonna fucking tell me that I'm have to show you that I'm fucking American? Like, no, I'm more American than you.
But
You know what I mean?
that
It's like so. It's like
attitude,
I'm not gonna fucking sit here and let one of these motherfuckers
that
tell
attitude,
me.
if you give them that attitude,
Sorry.
if you give them that attitude, hey, I don't care. I've been here. I'm as American as you are. You don't get to select. They will. Those people fold like empty lawn chairs. They always fold. They're those are midwits. I get you. I know what you're talking about. I've experienced that. But you answered. The solution was right there, which is fuck off. I'm fucking American. Been here 300 years. Like, I could totally be a left-wing NGO Soros-sucking faggot, right? And I'm not. I'm out here with a propaganda agency, basically for the right, doing great work day in, day out, connecting people, giving people work, doing solid things, building businesses, building brands. That is the answer. Is this like you ultimately, and this is where like COVID for me was ultimately an exercise in what other people think of me is no longer any of my business, right? And that is I wish I'd learned that at 30. Instead, I learned it around 40. And I needed the societal pressure cooker of COVID to really instill that in me. I've always been an independent. I've always been sort of a street brawler and unafraid to like be disliked. I've been popular. I've been unpopular. I've built communities. I've lost communities. So it is painful. It's traumatic, and to be betrayed and to be stabbed in the back or for something as ephemeral as like your genetic lineage or your secular Judaism, like, or the way you talk. It's just those people, I think they always fold. And ultimately, if you do the work, I mean, listen, you said something months ago that, and I really knew this is when I really kind of glommed on to you, was you talked about going to MAGA rallies and you talked about it being a kulak.
Yes.
A kulak movement.
Yeah.
Right. So you said something to that effect. Yeah. And this idea, and I think that like America is a kulak nation at its core. Totally we have it. Yeah. Right. We most like, and I want upper middle class Jews, Protestants, Catholics, maybe a small smattering of a few others, but not really, to be honest. I want those people who are like upwardly mobile, want better lives for them and their kids, want to grow wealth, want to grow businesses. Some are going to be entrepreneurial and risk-taking. Some are going to be a little bit more, get a professional degree, be stable, right? They don't have time to be subversive. They don't have time to be even political. It's just like when you got 3 kids to raise and a mortgage and you're trying to save up for college, but things are going well, then like you'll drain. I think you'll end up draining the bile from things. We both agree on this, which is we need to get back to an economic, prosperous, people need to feel it and believe that it's going to continue. This is a really precarious moment we're in. I don't think we talk about it enough because it gets lost in job numbers and inflation. But like we hear this all the time, right? We're the first generation that won't have it as good as the like, and we hear it again and again and again, the boomers, whatever. That goes against the promise of this country, whether you call that the American dream or you call it freedom or you call it being a pioneer or a risk taker or a pathfinder or a rule breaker or a monarch or a monarchy killer. Like, that is gone right now. It's within our grasp. I did not love, I mentioned, don't love everything about Trump, but what he was able to say, and he stopped talking about it, and I don't know why, is golden age. And I know it's tacky, and I know when Trump says gold, everyone just thinks gold toilets and this kind of kitschy, tacky, 80s, cocaine aesthetic. We are capable of that again. And that will, if we build prosperity, however we do it, if it's getting rid of, you're not going to probably get rid of 50 million, but if 10 or 15 million people self-deport and it's made really clear that like the worst of the worst, the people who are here for benefits and criminals and like maybe another million on top are gone, and tariffs and some protectionism work. If this is given 10 years to work and it works, like a lot of our problems are just going to drift away. things like anti-Semitism aren't just, no one's going to care because I tell this to people who are afraid. I still have a lot of normie and liberal friends, as I'm sure you do. And I say to them, if your biggest fear is the white working class getting race conscious, then why wouldn't you do everything in your power to make sure that the white working and lower middle class was rich and prosperous and safe? Instead, you humiliate them daily.
Right, yeah.
If you're big, because either you're lying that your biggest fear is Christian nationalism and Nazis, then if that's the case, then I would spend all my energy making sure that the white working and middle class
is doing better,
were
right?
strong,
Instead of
growing,
black, instead, right?
prosperous.
And and it's like the globalist Jews that you grew up with, who are like big power people. You're totally right. None of them really understand this. Even the ones who are based are still pretty just based for Israel. They're not really based on behalf of like white Americans, because they just have this core kind of like distrust or dislike of the common the Cletus, right? They think there's this Cletus out there that's going to come and kill them one day. Of course, there's many exceptions to this, you and I being them. So it's not being ones. It's not like everyone. But I'm saying it is true that these power guys, they really, it's a great point you're making. Like, why don't you ever think, okay, instead of just giving all your money to like black organizations or gay organizations and then kind of astroturfing this anti-white Christian thing, why don't you give the money to, if you're really worried about Hitler, the resurgence of Hitler, like, hey, George Soros, if you're really worried about the resurgence of Hitler, how about you make sure the economic conditions that led to Hitler don't happen in America, which is basically, we're not there, but we're, approaching. So anyway, all right, I actually got to go, but one thing somebody's saying, they're saying is Pete Quino's, do you want to clarify, are you calling Pete Quinones a midwit? Somebody is asking this.
No.
He's not.
No, he's incredibly smart. He's taught me a lot. I like side jokes. He's got a little bit of Jew brain.
Definitely hates Jews.
But I hates Jews. I like black jokes. I like black jokes and I like Asian jokes. And I was raised with and everyone made fun of each other. And he's also from the Bronx. And like, I'm from Manhattan. Like, I get him. I get his sense of humor. I get his dryness. I don't mind it. He's definitely not a midwit. He's a very smart. I have a lot of respect for him. He most likely will never want much to do with me. He's been kind in some DMs. I have nothing bad to say. I don't engage in gossip and drama. If I do, I will go publicly and say that, but I'm not anybody. But to be clear, yeah.
Okay. Well, you convinced him. He understands and agrees. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Everybody go read
Thanks.
Zach's piece. We will be in the show notes. It's called Are Nick Fuentes and Sam Hyde the Last of the America First? Many more nuanced points there. And we'll see you later. Peace.
Thank you. Thanks, peace, brother.